Roger, how are you?
Thank you. Fine.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator, for conducting this inquiry and for looking into job training, something that's very important to our organization and our affiliates. It comes at a very important time for Long Island. It's a time of change in the way we are developing and growing, and a time when there's certainly a lot of talk about investments in our infrastructure, which will make different kinds of growth very important for us. We certainly have a diverse economy, and answering the questions that you posed to the panel, if I could answer them all, I think that would make everything pretty easy for you. But
you.
I'll take a small piece of it. That's something that we've been actually working with, and see if we can find maybe a broader application for the principles that we used in this. We became involved in supporting the building trades efforts to reach out to do a pre-apprenticeship training. They were looking at this kind of training for a number of reasons, understanding that that training within the labor movement, particularly within the building trades, is well established. All of the locals in the trades have apprenticeship training programs, and so without public expenditure of dollars, that kind of training goes on and has been for some time, really affecting very high quality craftsmen for the industry. The way Long Island has changed is there's a lot more talk in our vocabulary now about mixed-use development, transit-oriented development, a slightly different kind than building out shopping centers or building power plants. Certainly our local unions and our tradesmen would love to build them, but that's not been not really at this point the main focus as we see Long Island changing. These involve housing coupled with retail in many cases and other kinds of uses, and we find a sort of a rebuilding of our downtowns. It's coincidentally, or not coincidentally, a lot of the developments that have been planned for Long Island are in areas that have had historically minority populations and populations who have been deprived of economic opportunities in the past, a lot of it due to Long Island history, a lot of it due to the fact that there just hasn't been a lot of work in those areas. So developers who have looked at major plans, for example, for Wyandanch, which got started first, Hempstead, Huntington Station, eventually perhaps in Brentwood, Ronkonkoma Hub.
Well, you missed Patchogue and Mineola, but it's okay.
I haven't gotten there yet. It's slightly different. I won't forget about them. Significant developments themselves. Those kinds of things have produced relationships where developers are trying to go forward and are being asked by community leaders to provide some kind of benefit for the community, variety of benefits. Jobs, specifically, they want jobs in local communities. Other benefits related to infrastructure, to roads, to recreation, to meeting places. We've gotten in many cases, developers have done this way ahead of where the labor movement has been, and labor has not been in on those discussions, but we're catching up with it. And it's important for us to build partnerships with community folks to try to bring across the concept that development without good jobs, without lasting careers, is really kind of a hoax, because to get a one-time job paying $12 an hour or whatever it may pay with no benefits that ends when the job ends in that local community is not the way to address poverty. It's not the way to address a stable workforce. What's really needed is career building, which is what our apprenticeship programs have always done. So, I mean, to get right to the point, it's been important for us to go to community leaders and to build allies who will say that we've got to have union jobs in these communities, because that's the only way that that's going to be done. So how do we address the requirements that are now in place through these community benefits agreements in a logical and rational way? Well, the pre-apprenticeship program is not new. I started working with these back in the early 70s with the AFL-CIO when it was federally funded nationwide. And there were probably pre-apprenticeship programs everywhere across the country. They're fully funded for both outreach and training and placement. They slowly, over time, those evolved, they changed, and mostly died, and people were scrambling to find ways to make them work. What we established with the building trades, what the building trades established with our work, and the work of partners such as the Workforce Development Institute, United Way, Suffolk County Department of Labor, was Opportunities Long Island, which had its first class just last year, very successful, is working on establishing another class, which is doing some interviewing and trying to bring qualified candidates forward to get into an 8 to 10 week course that will allow them to get a leg up on entry into the union apprenticeship programs. We think it has great promise, because it can change that cycle of poverty in the communities. It can change a community relationship from one of providing public supports to one where we have jobs and a middle class being built. Something that's been historically blocked, by historic redlining and other issues that's really part of our history. So that, as you correctly pointed out in the introduction, we have a kind of a rosy job picture on the surface of it. But as you look at the individual areas of Long Island, there are pockets of poverty and pockets of unemployment and non-placement. So that was the primary purpose of what we were trying to do here. I think so far it looks bright. The building trades are happy with it. They are bringing people from that program and have been placing them in apprenticeship programs. They're looking to the future. If we can just get those developments to catch up with the initial work that's being done by the building trades, that would be a great benefit. Now, can we take this model and do something larger with it? Does it have any applications? I think that could be an interesting question. When the building trades and Long Island Fed were studying some models to base this on, we looked at Hartford, which had what they call the Hartford funnel. They take in probably about 250 people into the funnel each year, mostly from economically distressed communities, parts of Hartford, Stamford, New Haven, and they look at whether they can, which way can they direct them? Can some go into a pre-apprenticeship? Do they have the requirements? Do they have a high school degree? Do they have a task? Do they have a driver's license? Can they do math and reading on the 8th grade level, same as we have here? If you can do that, you go there. If not, what else can we do? Can they go into some of the specific training programs like perhaps what we've just heard about Suffolk Community College and go into other industries? I think that's a real possibility. In Hartford, I know they're sending them to other areas such as the hospitality industry to work for utilities. That's something we can imagine and perhaps get to and when our project is a little more mature. It's not at that point by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm thinking about also other areas where we're going to see growth on Long Island, where training is going to be vitally important. The energy, for example, in a renewable portfolio standard being proposed by the governor's office and probably adopted by most utilities, will require a 50% renewable standard. And it's very likely that Long Island could become the center of an offshore wind industry. The U.S. Department of Energy estimates that by the year 2030, there could be 43,000 jobs in offshore wind nationwide. And it's going to start here because we have a company, Deepwater Wind, that you may be familiar with, that has the only lease in the Atlantic that exists today. And if we do certain things and we purchase a certain amount of renewable energy, then we can kickstart that industry. At the same time, we've got to be mindful of workers, particularly upstate, who are in traditional fossil fuel power plants who are going to be displaced, and there are going to be a lot of them, not because we want to put an end to them, but the market will dictate this to some degree, and these requirements for that standard, we can't lose this workforce. We've got to retrain And it may not require that much retraining, but retrain and locate people with great skills before we reach out into the new workforce. We've got people who are ideal for moving into other industries who may be displaced. Just on the training front, back to OLI, I want to thank you specifically for the initiatives that you've taken with respect to pre-apprenticeship statewide. The program was based on initially on grants through the workforce development boards, and that's kind of it's difficult on Long Island. We have one for Suffolk County through the Department of Labor, and we have two others that cover specific areas in Nassau County. They provides us certainly not a stipend, but it's a training grant per employee. It doesn't sustain outreach, and it doesn't sustain placement throughout the year. And so I want to thank you for the way you looked at this and felt that there was a need to sustain these programs because of the immense possibilities that they have. I want to say one thing about one of our major partners, the Workforce Development Institute. They're also involved with training. Rosalie has managed to make relationships with everybody in the room somehow. She's done this, and so they're important to everyone. But specifically in industries where we have representation, English as a second language, for example, as a form of training is excellent, really, for the hospitality industry, for the food services industries, for manufacturing. It allows a diverse and changing workforce to adapt and use the skills they have and help us grow. And they are a source of great growth for us. So I want to thank you for the inquiry. I hope this is helpful.
It is. It's very helpful, and I would agree with you that OLI is doing a wonderful job. I think it's a very targeted program, and it's appropriate. I've always been fascinated that our building trades have apprenticeship programs. And for those high schoolers who choose that or decide that perhaps a college degree is not for them, and if you look at the jobs that are available through our apprenticeship programs and eventually journeyman status in these trades, it's a great living to be made working through the trades. And you get your training, essentially your college degree, because that's what it is. It is a training program, a multi-year, multifaceted training program for free. So it's the equivalent of scoring a full college ride without going to college, tying to a job, and being able to work in your community for good wages. And so that's something that the trades have done remarkably well, and they do it individually across New York State, one local at a time. And so the possibility of being able to use that model as best practices, because frankly, when a college degree costs $50,000 or $60,000 a year, the opportunity to tie somebody to a job locally is incredibly important, and a good paying job at that.
As the trades have pointed out, this comes at no cost to the community, because this is an industry-supported program. So naturally they're frustrated, and had Dick O'Kane been in the seat, you might have had a further discussion from him about the kinds of state programs through our IDAs that are promoting growth within our communities, yet allowing people from out of state to come in, contractors who don't employ our folks here. And are not taking advantage of this program.
I'll get to that in a second, because although Dick O'Kane, who's the president of the Long Island building trade, isn't here, we'll channel him for a moment. But the opportunity that exists. I asked a panel up in Rochester, when is the last time that a guidance counselor from a high school reached out to the building trades to ask for the building trades to come into the high school to offer opportunities for high school students as an alternative, perhaps, an alternative career path for those students? And the answer was never. And so, there's a real missed opportunity there, because I believe that if there was that interaction between high schools and the trades or industry, much the same way that exists between high schools and colleges. They have college day, and they have all these colleges come in, and they have college fairs, and they come in and they essentially set up booths to entice students to go to those colleges. Why shouldn't we do the same thing with other career opportunities that may exist and may actually be better suited for certain students? And so perhaps it takes us walking outside of our comfort zone for a second and asking those questions, because I do think there are opportunities. So whether it's through community colleges and through earned skills, or frankly, whether it's through an apprenticeship program where they're going to learn those skills in very much the same way, again, at the end of the day, it's about tying people, giving them opportunities, and tying people to a career path that allows them to support a family, put food on the table, and frankly, I think we would all agree that there's dignity in work, there's dignity in receiving a paycheck, and there's dignity in being able to find that career path that allows you to do that. So I think the state has to do a better job at doing that. You mentioned offshore wind. You mentioned the possibility of those jobs. I also have had the opportunity to speak to that industry. It seems like there is an opportunity on the horizon, and not too far out on the horizon, for Long Island, because of its geographic location, to be situated in a way that would allow it to become a hub for renewable energy development, specifically offshore wind, as it pertains to not only those areas off the Massachusetts and Rhode Island coast that Deepwater have now, but certainly other areas off the mid-Atlantic coast, off New Jersey, far enough from Long Island where they will not be seen from our beaches, right, but close enough where they can actually tie back to Long Island as a hub for the development of those jobs. We're talking about literally tens of thousands of jobs that can materialize over the next 5 or 10 years.
It's an exciting development.
It is an exciting development. Are we in a position where we can gear up to provide the necessary training, whether it's through our trades, or whether through our trades and our community colleges? Certainly the Long Island Federation of Labor is going to have to play an integral part in this effort, because as a region, we're going to have to, if this is an opportunity that we want to pursue for the kinds of high-paying, well-paying careers that we're talking about, we're going to have to start gearing up and developing those programs. How do we do it?
I think that the building trades apprenticeship programs provide an excellent opportunity to begin. And they can cover most of those skills. There are a few new ones. Offshore rigging and assembly is probably going to be a new skill. But it's not that much different from the same kinds of skills that are done onshore. It's just slightly different. So we have that ability to change. I think that there's going to be a manufacturing component to it as well.
Sure. They're going to have to manufacture the turbines and the blades and certainly construct them here and transport them there.
And there's no facility to do that in this country except one.
Yet. But the opportunity also, which I think is interesting, and now we're sort of digressing a little bit, but the opportunity for Long Island to sort of turn back towards its maritime heritage and sort of rediscover the sea and be oriented not only towards, and not that there's anything wrong with it, not only towards New York City in terms of jobs, but also oriented again towards a maritime industry, because it's going to be very much that shipping and transports and the like, so that we can connect to these different facilities. So it's a very exciting opportunity. The last question I have is, we have all of these different groups. We have WIBs, we have, REDCs. I'm a member there as well. And different acronyms that we have throughout the state, all trying to do the same thing. And so one of the challenges I think that we found through our task force hearings is that everyone's trying to do the same thing, but to a large extent, everyone seems to be doing the same thing without any coordination. And you know, I would love to hear your sense of, you know, how do we, or how should we, in terms of setting state policy, how do we cut through that? You know, I think education is a great opportunity through our community colleges. I think, obviously, apprenticeship programs as a model, collectively bargained, labor, I think, is important, and I'll explain why. But I also think that, you know, we have so many different facets that have been developed, each trying to do the same thing, that we kind of lose sight of the bigger picture. How do we do this? What would you suggest?
Well, our workforce defense boards, the development boards, not defense, development boards. I like the better one was WIB, because you can say WIB, so I'll say WIB anyway. The WIB boards are a channel for federal dollars from the Workforce Investment Opportunities Act, which have come down. Originally, that was the source of training that we were taking advantage of with help from the Suffolk County Department of Labor, which is the WIB, the WDB for Suffolk County. They're very specific in their intent. It's really for dislocated workers, people who've been out of school. They may have had their brush with the justice system, or they're a parent or a foster child. Some very specific things which may eliminate or may exclude larger portions of the population, but populations that need to be addressed specifically where we're going into these major developments. So there's some logic, but there needs to be an overlay. Right. And I think you addressed it properly by generalized support for pre-apprenticeship in the state, because I don't think we're going to change. There are new regulations being dealt with right now for WIOA, the federal act, but it won't change its direction significantly. It'll address those populations that have been injured, damaged, and disadvantaged, and that's entirely justified. But yet you can't maintain long-term the outreach into the community just on those programs. It's not enough.
No, we need a broader discussion, and we need to have a strong state policy again. Mm-hmm. And again, it's to connect those over 100,000 jobs that are out there with those people who are still looking for jobs and lack perhaps the skill set. We need to make sure that the state is an active partner in providing the skills necessary so that people can do those jobs. And I think that is as simple as it gets.
And I think since Rosalie started banging all of our heads together, we've had a great amount of communication on Long Island about how these projects can interface with each other.
You mentioned Rosalie twice now, and so I'm going to take the opportunity, even though she's the next person who will be testifying here this morning, I'll take the opportunity just to say that Ed Murphy is from the Workforce Development Institute, is a person who I think finds like-minded people and like-personality people to work with him. And so we see that in Rosalie in her efforts here on Long Island, because as active as Ed has been statewide in promoting workforce development, I'm glad to see that he's found like-minded individuals to work with him as well.
Yes, like-minded, maybe not the same personality, but like-minded.
Senator Croce, it's great to see you. Thank you very much for being here. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Roger, thanks very much for being here. Thank you. Next up, we have the oft-mentioned Rosalie Drago from the Long Island Regional. She's the Long Island Regional Director for the Workforce Development Institute.
Thank you and good morning. First, thanks to the Senate in general for having the hearing, but also for supporting WDI. It's great to have this discussion about workforce development, but even greater to have the resources to take action and address some of the issues we'll talk about today. So our thanks to you. For those who don't know, Workforce Development Institute is a statewide nonprofit, and the way Ed Murphy has structured it is that we have regional directors, and our job is amazingly boots on the ground. They said that on my interview, but to really experience it. I have in 1 year at this job visited 100 businesses personally to talk to them about their workforce development issues, and then met with all of my colleagues and served on most of the boards. So we're able to, in our work, hear what's really happening, look for trends, and share that information with our partners. So it's a really unique position. And it's worth mentioning that the 27 businesses that we helped fund training for last year do business with over 1,000 other small businesses in New York State. So the jobs that we create here in this one region stretch out and reach into the rest of the state. So it's important what you've brought to the table here and what we're talking about today. The unfilled positions you talked about are predominantly in this region in manufacturing, hospitality, building, and mechanical trades. And these offer prospects of career, not just jobs, as Roger alluded to earlier. The interesting thing is that they require strong soft skills and analytical skills. And it requires, again, tying back to earlier today, what John Lombardo was talking about, industry-driven. But at the same time, those soft skills are trying to teach people how to be workers in a time period when they're used to being behind a screen. So it's very challenging for our high schools, our colleges, and our employers to teach people how to work with one another as much as they're trying to teach them a specific trade. You asked why we can't fill these jobs and what the gaps are, the reason for the gaps. First and foremost, the sectors that need workers are falsely perceived as low skill and jobs that don't go anywhere. And as we've discovered today and discovered often, they're good paying jobs and they have a career pathway. The results of that thinking means that the prospects for the emerging workforce, K through 12, don't have an opportunity to discover and hone their skills in those areas because the guidance counselors aren't suggesting it. And part of that reason is because the parents are asking the guidance counselors not to suggest it, and they don't understand the importance of this kind of work. And I'll also jump back to calling it an alternative workforce. It's an intelligent pathway to ensuring that people come out prepared for work. So it's not necessarily an alternate to going to college, and that's the one way. It's a place to cultivate practitioners in any career. Technological competency is embedded in all aspects of work. So I think that we tend to silo this thinking that you're either in a technology career, you're in a building career, you're in an administrative career, but technology is in every single part of our work today. So if you're a line worker in a manufacturing facility, you have to know technology to operate any one of those gigantic CNC machines. And if you're a teacher in a classroom, you need technology to teach your students. And it's something that is inherent to the emerging workforce, but if their teachers can't teach that technology, it doesn't help them learn the skill. And a job seeker, in terms of the dislocated workers that you asked about, they have to be able to apply online. There is no other way to get a job today if you can't apply online and communicate with an employer online. So that connectivity to technology and having the most relevant technology in the classroom and the Department of Labor's career centers across the board is essential to anyone having a job or getting a job. It's important also in most of these industries when they talk about the image that it's low skill. There's no such thing as a low skilled worker anymore. I cannot pass the math tests to get into the building trades. And most of the manufacturing jobs are geometry, trigonometry, and this is not low skill. So it's important that everyone gets those critical skills no matter what career. And again, so that's why I don't feel it's an alternative pathway. These are really skilled careers and people aren't preparing them or looking at them in a way as if they're skilled careers. The Department of Labor does an excellent job of trying to address all of the populations and all the distinct needs. They're at a disadvantage in their career centers because and I work a lot with manufacturing. We work across all industry sectors and support them with training, but we've done a lot with manufacturing this year. Manufacturers, and I think to the hospitality industry, they use social media and referrals predominantly for their hiring. So they're traditionally people outside of dislocated workers that are being sent to Department of Labor because of unemployment aren't going to look for a job at a job bank at Department of Labor. They're going on social media, they're going to a friend, they're going to their schools, and so the career centers may not have a sense of all the jobs open and all the skills that are needed for that reason. So it's super important. And one of the recommendations that I'll make is that there's an industry sector advisory committee, similar to what's starting to happen in colleges like Suffolk Community College, serving those career centers, so that each industry can really spend time with the career counselors and the business counselors at those centers and help them understand what's happening in industry, because just looking at job openings alone won't do that. And also, there's been a tremendous benefit for working in this organization, going door to door and seeing what those jobs look like. So to the extent that Department of Labor counselors can be given a structure where they can go out and see what the work environment is, what the skills look like, because reading them on a paper was very different from seeing, in person what happens on site at these facilities. You talked about alignment, and it's something big that I focused on here. There are multiple agencies doing multiple things, and it comes to 2 points. Roger's discussion about the funnel. If we're all aligned under one goal for workforce development, then everybody comes through one funnel, regardless of what your orientation is or why you're looking for a job, and then we start to address the people in the process. So it's important that we get on the same page. The other really, really key thing is that career programs make it easier for people and affordable for them to advance careers. So at the moment, if a dislocated or a person in transition in their career goes into one of John's advanced manufacturing programs and it's non-credit, they get a great job, they want to advance. In many institutions, when they go back, those non-credit courses aren't stackable and don't count towards when they want to go back towards their next level career, right? And the faster we advance people in their careers, the more open jobs we have for the entry level to bring in the next pipeline of employers. So to the extent that we can ensure that when you come into a program, wherever you enter the program for training, that it's stackable, that it's easily transitioning to the next level up. I think it's something like 80% of the people that come into these technical programs wind up going back for their 4-year degree. But if we make it hard to do that or expensive to do that, so to your point earlier about having a funding that they can count on and know that they can come back and continue their education, would be fantastic. We're working with Suffolk Community College, Suffolk Department of Labor, Stony Brook on a manufacturing pre-employment training. We have employers at the table designing that program. In addition to the fact that they designed the program along with John and said this is what we want, they're also doing on-site training. So hands-on experience is key, because classroom learning and lab learning is fantastic, but one of the things that we've been working on supporting regionally and across the state is that people include hands-on training at the employers. The employers get to see what the work ethic is like, but in addition, they're really getting to see what it's like to be in a facility. Just trying to think what else was really important here. When we talk about bridging the skills, we have PTEC, the PTEC program with Farmingdale. Is putting their first 150 students through their manufacturing training program. It is linked directly from high school, and they arrive at the end with a college degree. So they start in high school. It's a very clear path. It explains what the jobs are at each level, what they're learning, what their earning potential will be, and it's linked directly. So there's no extra step, extra application, extra funding. You're in high school, you start the program, you get a degree when you're done. So it's Farmingdale. It's got 12 employers at the table that are advising that program, and 3 high schools on Long Island. And in hospitality, which we'll hear about later, there's a bridge program with East Islip and St. Joseph's, which does the same thing. Find that passion, find those skills in high school, and take them right through to a college degree with a job. So I think those are the key things. And the last thing I would, address, and I'm sure you'll have questions, is that unified campaign includes 2 things: a unified, marketing initiative to showcase what we have on Long Island, and and educate parents and guidance counselors and career counselors about what these jobs mean. So again, in partnership with ADAPT and LIFT and Suffolk Community College and Stony Brook, WDI produced and funded a video for Manufacturing Day about millennials in manufacturing. We showcased young people and young jobs. Most of those people were making, were in $50,000 to $75,000 a year jobs as starting jobs. Exciting jobs where they have input, creativity, and advanced degrees in manufacturing. And that's being used in schools to recruit now. We need more efforts in marketing, and we need more efforts in combining our workflow together.